Hey, this is Mark, and you're welcome to AUTOSAYS. It's a warm summer evening in 1964. You're standing at a stoplight in Detroit, and suddenly you hear it. That deep, rumbling growl that makes your chest vibrate, a sound so powerful it drowns out everything else around you, and then you see it. A brand new Pontiac GTO rolling up beside you, all muscle and chrome, and in that moment, something primal awakens inside you. Something that says, freedom isn't just a word, it's a feeling you can hold in your hands and feel through the gas pedal under your foot. If you've ever wondered why Americans became absolutely obsessed with these thundering beasts of steel and horsepower, why we built cars that guzzled gas like there was no tomorrow and roared loud enough to wake the dead, then buckle up, because you're about to discover the incredible economic and historical forces that turned muscle cars into the most American thing since apple pie. And trust me, this story has more twists than a mountain road and more power than a Hemi engine at full throttle. And hey, if you're already feeling that excitement building, do me a solid and smash that like button right now and hit subscribe, because we're diving deep into automotive history and you won't want to miss what's coming next on this channel. Hey, this is Mark, and you're welcome to AUTOSAYS. Now let me take you back to a time when America was on top of the world, when the economy was booming like never before, and when the average working man could actually afford to buy a piece of pure, unadulterated power. Because here's the thing nobody talks about. Muscle cars weren't born from some corporate boardroom decision or a carefully calculated marketing strategy. No, they exploded onto American streets because of a perfect storm of economic prosperity, cultural rebellion, and technological innovation that could only happen once in history. The year is 1945. World War II just ended, and American factories that were turning out tanks and bombers suddenly found themselves with all this manufacturing capacity and nowhere to direct it. So what did they do? They turned their attention to cars. And not just any cars, but bigger, faster, more powerful machines than anyone had ever seen before. But here's where it gets interesting, and I mean really interesting. The GI Bill had just put money in the pockets of millions of returning soldiers. The suburbs were exploding outward like a slow-motion fireworks display, and suddenly, America had something it never had before. A massive middle class with disposable income and a hunger for excitement after years of war and rationing. The economic numbers from this era are absolutely staggering, and they'll blow your mind. Between 1945 and 1960, American GDP nearly doubled. Unemployment was at historic lows, hovering around 3 to 4%, and average wages were climbing faster than a kid shimmying up a tree to get a better view of a car show. Factory workers, plumbers, electricians, regular folks were making enough money to own homes, raise families, and still have cash left over for something fun, something wild, something that would make their neighbors' jaws drop. And the car companies? Oh, they were paying attention, watching every dollar that flowed through the economy like hawks circling over a field, and they realized something profound. Americans didn't just want transportation, they wanted emotion. They wanted status. They wanted to feel alive. But wait, because here's where the story takes a turn that nobody saw coming. In the late 1950s and early 1960s, young people, baby boomers who were just coming of age, started demanding something different from their parents' comfortable, sensible sedans. They wanted danger. They wanted speed. They wanted to feel the wind whipping through their hair as they pushed a machine to its absolute limits on some abandoned stretch of highway under the stars. Think about the cultural moment for just a second, really let it sink in. Elvis was gyrating on television, James Dean had just become an icon of rebellion, and young Americans were questioning everything their parents took for granted. So when Pontiac's chief engineer John DeLorean took a powerful 389 cubic inch V8 engine and stuffed it into a mid-sized Tempest body in 1964, creating the GTO, he wasn't just building a car, he was bottling lightning. He was capturing the spirit of an entire generation that refused to play it safe. And the economics of this decision? Pure genius, because here's what made muscle cars such an explosive success. They were cheap to produce, since manufacturers were basically taking existing platforms and dropping in big, powerful engines that they already had on hand from their full-size models. The profit margins were incredible, and the demand was absolutely insane. A young guy working at a factory could walk into a dealership with maybe $3,000, which was about 6 months of his salary, and drive out in a car that could go from 0 to 60 in under 7 seconds and reach top speeds that would make modern lawyers faint from liability concerns. But you know what the really crazy part is?
The insurance companies hadn't caught on yet, so these kids were insuring rockets on wheels for the same price as their mom's grocery getter station wagon, which meant the total cost of ownership was shockingly affordable, at least for those first few golden years before the actuaries started running the numbers and having collective heart attacks. Now, let me throw some specific numbers at you that really illustrate the economic power of this movement, because this wasn't some niche market, this was a full-blown cultural and economic phenomenon. In 1964, Pontiac expected to sell maybe 5,000 GTOs, but they ended up moving over 32,000 units, and by 1966, that number had exploded to nearly 97,000, and that's just one model from one manufacturer. Ford's Mustang, which kicked off the pony car craze that ran parallel to the muscle car boom, sold over 400,000 units in its first year, shattering every sales record in automotive history and making Ford executives so happy they probably didn't sleep for a week from pure adrenaline. Every major American manufacturer jumped into the game with both feet. Chevrolet had the Chevelle SS and the Camaro, Dodge unleashed the Charger and the Challenger, Plymouth brought out the Barracuda and the Roadrunner, Mercury had the Cougar, AMC threw in the Javelin, and even Buick and Oldsmobile, traditionally conservative brands, got in on the action with the GSX and the 442. The competition between these brands created an arms race of horsepower that pushed engineering to its limits, with each manufacturer trying to outdo the others by stuffing bigger engines, adding more carburetors, and shaving off every possible ounce of weight. But here's where a question might be rattling around in your head right now. And I mean, why did this happen in America and not anywhere else in the world? I mean, Europe had fast cars, they had Ferraris and Jaguars and Porsches, so what made the muscle car such a uniquely American phenomenon? The answer comes down to three factors that created the perfect breeding ground: cheap gasoline, wide open spaces, and an economy that gave working class people enough disposable income to buy toys. In the 1960s, gas in America cost around 30 cents a gallon, which in today's money would be about $2.50, and when you're paying that little to fuel up, who cares if your car only gets 10 miles per gallon when you're having the time of your life every time you stomp on that gas pedal? The American landscape also played a crucial role because, unlike Europe with its narrow, winding medieval streets and tiny parking spaces, America had vast interstate highways, long, straight roads that stretched to the horizon, and drag strips popping up in every town where kids could legally push their cars to the limit. The economics of the oil industry at this time were equally important because American oil production was at its peak. OPEC hadn't yet flexed its muscles, and the government was actively encouraging automobile use through massive infrastructure spending on highways, which meant the entire economic system was set up to support this power obsession. And then came the cultural impact, which rippled through American society in ways that still affect us today. Muscle cars became symbols of freedom, independence, and rebellion against conformity. They showed up in movies like Bullet, with Steve McQueen's legendary Mustang chase scene that redefined what car chases could be, in Vanishing Point, where a white Dodge Challenger became a symbol of anti-establishment defiance, and in countless songs from the Beach Boys to Bruce Springsteen that celebrated the romance of the open road. The economic impact extended far beyond just car sales too, because think about the entire ecosystem that grew up around muscle cars. Speed shops opened on every corner, selling performance parts and aftermarket modifications. Drag racing became a legitimate sport with professional leagues and sponsorships pumping millions of dollars into local economies. Car magazines multiplied like rabbits to feed the appetite for information and comparison tests, and a whole subculture of mechanics, tuners, and enthusiasts created jobs and businesses that hadn't existed before. But then, and you knew this was coming, the party couldn't last forever because in 1973, OPEC imposed an oil embargo that sent gas prices skyrocketing overnight, suddenly jumping from 30 cents a gallon to over $1, and Americans found themselves waiting in lines that stretched for blocks just to fill up their tanks. The economic shock was brutal and immediate. Muscle cars that had been symbols of freedom and prosperity suddenly became expensive liabilities that cost a fortune to feed. Insurance companies who had finally figured out that these cars were driven by young guys with more testosterone than sense raised premiums to astronomical levels, and new federal regulations on emissions and safety added weight and complexity that strangled the big engines that made muscle cars special. By 1974, the golden age was over, with most manufacturers either discontinuing their performance models entirely or turning them into watered-down shadows of their former selves, with emissions equipment that choked power output down to pathetic levels. The economic transformation was stark. A 1970 Chevelle SS with a 454 cubic inch engine produced 450 horsepower. But by 1975, the most powerful engine you could get in the same car made less than 200 horsepower, and that decline tells you everything you need to know about how quickly the dream died. But here's the beautiful thing about American automotive culture, and this is where the story gets really good. The love affair never actually ended, it just went underground, hibernating through the dark ages of the late 70s and 80s, waiting for its moment to return. Fast forward to today, and the muscle car market is more alive than ever, with original classics from the golden age selling for hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars at auction. A pristine 1971 Plymouth Hemi Cuda convertible sold for over $3.5 million, which represents an investment return that would make Wall Street traders weep with envy. Modern manufacturers have brought back the legendary names.
The Mustang, Camaro, Challenger, and Charger all returned with modern technology, but classic styling that pays homage to their ancestors. And these new muscle cars are selling incredibly well, proving that the appetite for American performance never went away, it was just waiting for the economics to make sense again. The cultural impact of muscle cars on American identity cannot be overstated because they represented something deeply fundamental about how Americans see themselves as individualists who value freedom, power, and the ability to chart their own course, as people who don't accept limits imposed by others, as dreamers who believe that with hard work and a little bit of money, they can own something extraordinary. The economic lesson here is profound too. Muscle cars prove that you don't need to be rich to experience excitement and performance, that the working class could have their cake and eat it too, and that American manufacturing could create products that were both affordable and aspirational, which is a combination that's increasingly rare in today's economy where luxury and performance seem reserved only for the wealthy. Looking back at the golden age of muscle cars, we can see it was a unique moment in American economic history when rising wages, cheap energy, technological innovation, and cultural rebellion all collided to create something magical, something that could never be exactly replicated because the specific economic conditions that enabled it were temporary. So the next time you hear that unmistakable rumble of a big American V8, remember that you're not just hearing an engine, you're hearing the sound of economic prosperity, cultural freedom, and the belief that ordinary people deserve extraordinary things. And that's why America fell in love with muscle cars, because they weren't just transportation, they were rolling declarations of independence, proof that you could work hard, save your money, and buy yourself a ticket to freedom that sat in your driveway and waited to take you anywhere you dared to go. If this story got your engine running and made you appreciate the incredible history behind these American icons, hit that like button, subscribe to AUTOSAYS for more deep dives into automotive history and economics, and drop a comment telling me what your dream muscle car would be if you could have any one from the golden age, because I read every single comment and I love hearing from fellow enthusiasts who understand that cars aren't just machines, they're time capsules of American dreams on wheels.